This free video is brought to you by the Team Topologies Academy. Our goal is to help organizations become more effective and more humane. If you find this video helpful, we would love for you to check out and recommend our Academy content.
We decided that a discussion about each section would be useful, didn't we, Manuel?
Yes, at the end of each part, we'll be chatting about the topics and provide some additional insights.
In the overview, we've discussed a range of things that affect remote working, but maybe one of the most surprising things to many people is how much remote working happens anyhow. So like if we have an office floor that has 100 or 200 or 500 people, then almost certainly these days, people are emailing each other or sending each other messages on Instant Messenger, Slack or whatever, and they're not talking face to face. That effectively is already remote. We've seen this in a few places, haven't we, Manuel?
Yes, it's very quickly you grow out of the capacity to have everyone in the same floor. So different floors and even more with different buildings, you'll have people are not going to be walking around all the time to talk to others. They'll use the tools they have available, chat tools, email, etc.
Or indeed a separate building or a separate floor might actually act as a kind of boundary or a block to conversation. And you start to see if one group is in a physical separate building and they're using Slack to communicate, you've already got a kind of split in the responsibilities, and that might start to manifest in terms of system architecture, as Conway's Law tells us, and we explained in the Team Topologies book. So I think organizations need to be kind of realistic about what's actually already happening. Remote work is already happening inside the same building with your employees who are in theory on site in person, but that remote work's already happening now. People are using digital tools and channels and things, or trying to use them, and maybe getting confused. So like the stuff we've seen a lot of organizations really struggling with this aspect when they think, oh well, we're not remote, we're on site, all in the same place, but they're using these online tools, and people are struggling because there's no naming conventions for channels and this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's sad. It's true that when you're in the same physical office, at least teams that are closely related to each other, working on the same system, they will probably have more contact by the coffee machine or the water cooler, and they can clarify some of the issues where they see there's a mismatch perhaps between what we were expecting to do in our team and what we expected you to do in your team, and turns out this is not what's happening. And so those kind of conversations can help, but it's almost like it's a helper, but it doesn't really address the main problem, which is that we need to be more conscious about how do we detect mismatches, how do we course correct quickly, right? Not after we've spent 3 months or 6 months working on something and we realize we were going adrift. I have this image in my head, like the coffee machine is almost like a machine to discover mismatches, right? When people come together by the coffee machine or the water cooler and they find these problems, but it's sort of by chance to some extent. And that's why, as you were saying, Matthew, whether you're in the physical office or in online or hybrid, once you go past that kind of boundary of 30, 40, 50 people, which is actually a trust boundary in Dunbar's research, people are effectively working remotely to some extent, even if they're sitting in the same building or in the same area.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a limited amount of happy accident or serendipity that we can engineer. Even if everyone's in the same building, there's a limited number of water coolers and limited number of times when people are going to accidentally happily be at the water cooler or coffee machine at the same time. And that stuff is important for sure, and we can celebrate it and try and make it more happen more. But we can also take additional approaches like making things more discoverable, making information more discoverable, like naming conventions for chat tool channels, things like that. I mean, we've been working with some customers where there's absolutely no conventions at all in the chat tool, And so people don't know whether a channel is the right place to post questions. There's no clear purpose. There might be 17 different channels that all look like they might be useful, but it turns out that they're for different purposes and so on. And what I've seen is that people resort to just contacting an individual by direct message, because that's the only way that they can navigate the online space, which is is incredibly ineffective to be then kind of linking you to specific individuals who happen to know some weird trick to get something done. So putting the time and effort into kind of curating and shaping that, designing that online space, just as we design a physical space. You would not expect to walk into an office, a physical office, and for there to be no chairs or tables or no partitions and no meeting rooms and that kind of thing. You'd expect it to be designed with a clear purpose. The online space needs designing as well, but yet loads of organizations don't invest the time to do kind of any design of the online space at all. And it's really hard for people to find an effective way of working with the online tools.
I think a key aspect of making remote working effective is to address these different concerns, right? As we were saying, not leave things to chance, that by chance we found the right channel, or by chance we had a conversation with this person from the other team and we discovered there's maybe some mismatch, and being more intentional and understand what are different concerns we should have. We should be thinking about how do we build trust between people, between teams, and if we're remote, how we're going to do that, or if we're hybrid, how we're going to use the time that people have actually to be physically present together to build trust, rather than focus on getting more work done. That will become easier if the trust is built between these teams and within each team. So that's one concern, the trust levels. Another one is discoverability of information, as you were mentioning. How do we make information easy to access, have adequate conventions, make sure documentation and other information is easily accessible, available to everyone. It's not hidden in some pocket, or that people don't have access to certain parts of the intranet or what have you. So make the information easy to discover and with right conventions as well. And so these are different concerns, right? And then you have concerns about how are teams working and interacting in a remote context. How do we make that more clear? How do we allow teams to not spend their effort and their sort of cognitive capacity figuring out when and how am I going to get information from another team, or I'm going to collaborate with another team. And so the things we're going to talk in this course, and we started discussing, are effectively some simple tools to help us do these things. But we need to understand these different concerns for a healthy organization in a remote context, building trust, making information easy to discover, making interactions between teams easy to happen and to evolve.
And kind of familiar, so that, and that's part of the value, I think, of these some of the tools that we've devised and we've made available. Like we said, some of these tools effectively are kind of a template for communication, or like a template for structured communication between different teams. And to some people, that seems a bit strange. Like, why can't we just have it more freeform? But in reality, if you want to make this stuff familiar to lots of people, and people can kind of become familiar through practice with a particular way of interacting, then makes things much more straightforward. And so, I think certainly the organizations that we've worked with will pick up a tool like Team API, for example, and they realize that the value is not in forcing each team to specify, adopt it, or whatever. The value is in giving teams or providing teams the capability to have much more effective conversations with other teams. It's a tool. It's not there it's there to be used. It's there as a reminder of more fundamental important things. And so it helps organizations just to sort of remind themselves of the things that are valuable to do, to have conversations in a particular format, or to use particular terminology when having conversations about things. It just means we get straight to the point, and we don't need to waste time on on other aspects.
That's one of the main takeaways or benefits that almost everyone who read Team Topology said, that now we have a shared language. We can reduce the effort of talking about problems because we're using the same language to talk about, types of teams, interaction modes, cognitive load, what is different types of cognitive load, etc. And so that is very valuable. And other approaches like domain-driven design, for example, also focus a lot on having a shared language within your domain. And so that's really, really important.
There's actually a really good article, isn't there, from GitLab on the Team Topologies website, which talks about the way that their approach to remote first working with the kind of staff handbook and like an online self-service searchable information repository, effectively, so they can self-service and find the information they need themselves.
And GitLab has been a fully remote company for a long time. It might have been even from the beginning, but I think they don't even have like an actual headquarters where people would gather together. So they had to figure out these things already way before the COVID-19 pandemic. And it works. It's a living proof that it works, but you need to be intentional about how we're going to approach these different concerns. How do we clarify responsibilities, make information available, detect problems in boundaries of responsibility between teams. So that's a great article. And in general, their actual handbook for their employees available as well online if you want to have a look. And it's really insightful.
It's a reminder that particularly for remote work, but to be honest, for effective work in general, there's a degree of discipline, a degree of ongoing kind of discipline and effort that needs to be put into maintaining these kind of effective ways of working, shared language, thinking about team responsibility boundaries and this kind of thing. And that's just an ongoing thing that we need to continue to put effort into. Otherwise, things tend to fall apart, and people can't. People lose track of effective ways of interacting and working together, and so on.
So now we've finished the overview part. Up next, we're going to focus on team dependencies.